Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. I'm always fascinated by different trends, especially in the interior design area. There's so many different things that you can do in your living space, all these ideas we've talked about with her in the past. By the way, she's an amazing interior designer. Today, we're going to find out what she's into. We're going to learn, maybe it's trends. I'm not really sure. I'm going to call it MaryJo's must-haves. I don't know, her favorite things. MaryJo Major
Sounds great.
Joins us here. How you doing today?
Hey, Steve. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you back here. I'm intrigued since I've gotten to know you over these podcasts, and I don't want to say your style, but your methodology for when you look at a living space for the first time and what you can do, what you feel somebody should do to elevate it, make it theirs. So that said, curious, what are your favorite things right now? Where do you want to start?
I think designers tend to kind of pinpoint one or two things, and I counted up a list, but the things that get me the most excited about, Steve, are the things when you walk into a room that you may or may not notice right away, but when you do, there's almost like this, what? Like there's a little bit of like a surprise factor where it just like you didn't quite see it maybe again from the first glance, but when you do, it just gets you excited to kind of take a closer look. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about is this new, I would call it a trend slash it's kind of gone in and out over the years, but there's something called trim. Are you familiar with trim? Do you know what that word?
TRIM?
TRIM. It's not like the wood that you have around your ceiling or around your baseboard. It's fabric, and it looks like ribbon, and sometimes it'll have like little texture on it, or sometimes it'll have little balls, those little like pom-pom balls that kind of drop.
Sure.
So a lot of times you'll see them, especially I would say back in like, oh man, the 90s, when everyone was doing like a lot of fringe, everything on pillows and stuff.
Yep.
Think of just kind of like a flat kind of ribbon, if you will, and it's called trim, and people are using it right now to outline their room. And when I say outline, I mean every door, like along the baseboard and along like your fireplace, like there's a tiny little ribbon, usually in a bright color or, some sort of like dark color that's outlining the whole space. It
reminds me of my teenage daughter and her LEDs around everything in her room.
Yes. Yes. So imagine take that, but maybe make it a little bit more sophisticated. And it's what I like about it is that it's especially powerful when you have some cool kind of architectural something in your house.
Okay.
And it is more, I would say it leans a little bit more on the traditional side. So if you're really contemporary, I'm not quite sure, this will look maybe a little different. But specifically in more traditional designs, people have been doing it, and it's usually not very big. It's usually like less than an inch. And what it does is that, again, you don't always notice it. It's almost like eyeliner, where you don't even notice it except when you walk in, and then you're like looking at the walls, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, there's something that's like going around it all. And you realize this is what it is.
Do you have to put it around everything, or can you be selective? Like, I'm just going to do it around the ceiling. I'm just going to do it around the doors, that kind of thing. Or if you're going to do it, commit and do it.
It is. I think you probably could do it a little, somewhat, I would probably define it by like one wall at a time. But the impact of it is that it's everywhere, that it's both on the doors and on the base, as well as on the ceiling around the crown.
It sort of reminds me of Indian culture.
Yes. Okay. When they have the borders.
Yeah, where it's a fabric, and I don't want to, like the fringy thing, I'm trying to factor that out, but that kind of went in my mind. But just that kind of look, and I'm trying to think of what the patterns of the fabric would look like.
Yes. So this trim is usually just solid. So it's usually just like a solid, 1/2 inch, like let's just say it's like a dark cranberry. And then the walls, let's just say the walls are like some shade of pink. Okay. So it's in the same family, it's in the same color, but it's So it blends in, but it also kind of stands out.
Now that you said solid, now I get a better feel for it, and I'm more comfortable with it.
It is, again, it's not this is not something that you see a lot of. So there's a handful of designs and designers that I know kind of utilize this, but it is, it's like I said, it's a specific look, and so it's not for everyone, but it is one of those little surprises where when you're looking at
Yeah.
something, you're like, wow, that's so cool. And so that kind of, a little bit less of a specific type, this next thing I'm going to talk about is a little bit more kind of anyone can do it. And
Uh-huh.
that's like painting a ceiling. I just love painted ceilings that are different colors. It can be bright, it can be dark, it can be, really colorful or really muted, but creating some sort of kind of tone other than white is just really fun. It literally just brings anyone joy. I feel like anyone who goes into spaces with a colored ceiling can't help but be like, oh, this is cool.
I'm in between homes, as I shared with you before. And if I was in a position where I could paint right now, and I could
Yeah.
actually where I am, but
Okay.
I would have done it if I thought of it. And that's why you hire an interior designer, because
That's
I
right.
never even thought of it. I'm like, and now I'm picturing rooms in the last house, the house before that. And I'm only out of the last house in a year and change, but I'm picturing, well, I could have done it in that room, but I could have done that room. That would have been cool to do it there. And it's a thing now. It's not just a MaryJo must have or favorite.
No.
It is a thing.
It is a thing.
Yeah.
It is a thing. It used to be, it wasn't as mainstream, and now it's becoming more mainstream. But, remember back in the day when people did a lot more like statement walls, where
Yeah.
they would have just one color on one wall? I feel like that is what it's becoming, where it's
But just on
becoming
the ceiling.
almost, yeah,
Yeah.
just to create just some sort of pop and some sort of interest. And, again, it's just paint. It's not like you can't, change it back if you hate it or something. But what I most like about doing that is that it immediately changes how you feel in the room.
Mm.
So you could have all white walls, but if you have like a dark navy ceiling, it does create this kind of like almost like a little bit of like a hug, where you kind of walk in, and even though everything's white, if the ceiling's dark, you're like, oh, like there is something kind of almost comfy about it. If that's even a
Mm.
word you can use about a room.
And rich, something rich about it, just like
Yeah.
got something, because forever ceilings are white. Boring. Are there any?
That's right, Steve. It's
It
so boring.
is. It is. It's just boring. Um,
Yeah.
is there any rules of thumb when you're going to do? Let's go navy. Let's go dark.
Yeah.
Things
Uh,
we should be mindful of.
yes. So it's difficult to do it if it's a big open concept room.
Fair enough.
It's easier to do them when they're defined by specific, ceiling kind of differences. So, for example, like a bathroom ceiling, like that's pretty defined. That's pretty, noticeable. Or there's those, the separated, um, yeah, dining rooms. I would say, even entryways sometimes that you can just do that. I recently did a hallway. So you walk into this person's home and they have a hallway, and the hallway eventually kind of stops and it opens up into the rest of the room.
Yes.
And we decided to paint the ceiling. And what we did is we just kind of stopped it right as soon as the wall changed, as soon as the living room started, we kind of stopped it visually. So that way it still felt like, there was like a stopping point. So I would say, yeah, something that you can define easily. And in terms of colors, just make sure you love it. I mean, I think that there are some colors that are a little hard to see. So the colors that I'm thinking about are like what you take out of a Crayola marker box.
Hmm.
So I think something that's either, if you like a specific shade, let's just say of orange, finding something that's maybe a little bit more, has some gray undertones or a little bit deeper. So that way it doesn't feel so
Yep.
kind of strong when you see it. Same thing with, all those citrus kind of colors. I think you can either kind of lighten it and make it a little bit lighter, or you go, yeah, a little bit more saturated and gray, and it does make it feel more harsh. It makes it feel less harsh to your eyes when you're looking at it.
Gotcha. The one thing I'm thinking of versus the white ceiling is
Yeah.
darker, it's going to show more imperfections. Would you say that's correct?
No, I would say it depends on what sheen paint you use.
And there's that.
So a lot of sheens have, a little bit of shine to them, but if you do it in a flat, in general, it shouldn't the basic, it shouldn't show.
And most white ceilings are what? Flat. Use a flat paint. All right, very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Be thinking about that this weekend as I navigate through. And by the way, I would be a little weary of that hallway and then stopping, drawing a
hmm
line between the dark and the light. But
hmm
now that you said it, you gave it your blessing, so now I'm okay with it. But I wouldn't. I'd be like, I'm not an overthinker, but I'd be like, yeah, let me think about that a little bit more. How's that going to feel where it just stops? But it is a different room, so it's okay.
It is. It
Mm,
is. And it has, it's all about playing tricks on your mind, right? Your eyes look to see where kind of things start and stop. And so if the wall is
sure.
starting on, the edge, then yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I'm just really into right now is anytime I get a chance switching out the hardware on something. So this could be kitchen cabinets, this could be a bathroom vanity,
Yeah.
this could be a dresser, but really see like my favorite hardware. I'm not just talking about like kind of, a different finish or a different kind of shape. I'm speaking about the really cool stuff, like the stuff that's like wrapped in leather or has do you know what cane is, or like rattan? It's like that natural grass type material that's
Yes.
like on the back of chairs. They do that right now in knobs and
Now,
pulls.
are they doing that, embossing the metal to look like that? Or is it that
It's
other
the
material?
actual material. It's the
Wow. And it's
actual
durable?
material.
It lasts?
hmm hmm
Wow.
Yeah, and even, there's even hardware right now that is in the shape of like twigs or, you know, I don't know, they have these stones inset. I've seen them where they're meant to look like like these shell type, funky
Sure.
shapes. There's colored things. So, yeah, again, if you think back about what makes me excited, it's like kind of this element of surprise. It's one of those small details where if you're looking at, let's just say your media cabinet, or something where you have your TV on or whatever, you're storing your china cabinet, something that you're storing stuff. If the hardware is hot pink or looks like this leather wrapped, handle with like this cool, black on it, you're like, wait a second, like that didn't come with that, right? Like you kind of have to like realize that that's like this extra little detail that just makes it even cooler.
I feel that you're giving us permission. And three words: don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
Mm.
Don't be afraid because you know what? There's a quote actually that this kind of ties into. I just read from one of my favorite designers, and he says, rooms need to be dramatic to be interesting. And I think I would agree with that. Like, I think there needs to be a little something that feels out of someone's comfort zone, maybe, but it just makes it all the more interesting in the
Yeah,
space.
but we're afraid. Like I
Yeah, of
just admitted it
course.
before, cutting the line
That's
between
that's
the
why I'm
hallway.
here to hold your hand, to be
It
like, we're doing
is.
it together.
It
Yeah.
is. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, anytime changing out the hardware, that's a huge one. And the other thing, going back to kind of blank surfaces, the other trend that I'm really into right now is, and again, this isn't anything new, but lampshades are because there's a whole new kind of category right now of colored or patterned or some other type of lampshade. So again, if you think about the ceiling being the blank canvas, I feel like lampshades, like the standard basic white lampshades, are now becoming, something else where
Boring. They're boring. They really are. Just when they're just basic. Yeah.
they're just basic. Yeah. And, there is, I do think that you have to think about, is this a light you have to see on? Like you want to make it as bright as possible because white does do that. But I would say for a lot of other lamps out there, especially if they're more decorative, creating kind of a different texture or color on them,
Yep.
again, just immediately creates joy.
You just inspired me. because I didn't think of it because I'm so used to seeing it. But in that room over there is another studio, and we're working on it. We're upgrading it, and
Okay.
I have lamps from home that were in a sunroom, and they got a tropical vibe to it. And the lampshade has like pineapples on it, and it's really cool. It's been in there for years, and I totally forgot about it. And as we're talking of lamps, I've said before that I want to put lamps on my nightstands. I'm so
Okay.
tired of the overhead, hi hats and everything. I'll walk
Yeah.
into my bedroom, put that on, excuse me, just to see. And then I shut it off and I turn the TV on for light. I'm not even kidding.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm going to take those lamps and they become like wallpaper because
That's right.
I pass through every day. Don't even realize they're there, but they would be perfect because my bedroom's sort of a tropical vibe to it. And I forgot I had them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try it. They're a little bigger than I would like, but
Okay.
I'm going to try them anyway. The base is a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and that is the somewhat of the fun of it is it is a little bit of an experiment to figure out kind of what works the best. But I think that's a great idea. And especially if they're already there,
Oh my
you don't
gosh.
have to go looking for
They're
it.
not even used. They're in the corner, just thrown around. And I realized they were there because we were changing the lighting for a studio that we needed to
Okay.
see because it was dark.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
oh man, we got a lamp right over there. I plugged that in. But the light that comes off of that lamp is
Hmm.
just so warm and
Yeah.
inviting, relaxing. Isn't it funny that back in the day, like look at the progression. Back in
I
the
know.
day, that's how we saw with a table lamp. Then we all got bored of that. And then we wanted need the hi hats because the hi hats are cool. And look at I've upgraded.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
added hi hats. Look at how great that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And now we just want to go back to just that warm. What are you
I mean,
doing with
I
the
know.
color on the ceiling? It's hugging
Yeah.
you. It's hugging you.
It is. Yeah, I do think that people just want to feel comforted in their homes.
Connected.
I mean, you want to, the idea of like, what is home? What is home supposed to feel like? Well, I think one of the biggest emotions, if you will, is yes, it looks like you, it feels like you, but it feels comfortable. Like you would just feel great in it. Like you don't want to leave it. It's like your
Right.
favorite pair of sweatpants. So I think that, yeah, I'm all for trying out the pattern lampshades. And the other thing, I don't know if you've seen this either, Steve, where people will do a pattern in the lampshade and it's actually also repeated on the wallpaper behind the lampshades.
Same
So
pattern.
so it looks like again, it just kind of all blends in. A little bit of optical illusion. So again, this isn't for everyone. This is just the kind of new fun stuff that I just get excited about.
I'd have to process that one. I'm not saying I wouldn't. Depends on the pattern.
Sure, sure.
It's could be depending on the pattern and your taste, like a little
Yes.
overload, but cool at the same time
Yes.
with the pattern matches.
Yes. I've especially seen it done well in powder rooms. People will have, let's just say they have some sort of cool, like mountain, there's one that's almost like a whimsical mountains where they're green with some bits of red and yellow flowers all on them. And then the mirror is, let's just say bright red. So you kind of define the mirror. And then the lampshades on the lamp because they don't want to detract from the mirror, have the same shade as the
Hmm.
wallpaper.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Statements.
Yeah. But it gets us out of our comfort zone, but it's
Yes.
not that it's way out of our comfort zone. And we're
Right.
so trained to make sure everything matches, to
I
have a solid plus the pattern, blah, 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 blah.
know.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? Who said
Yeah.
so? Why?
I know. Yes, there are a lot of designers now, me included, that are embracing this, depending on the client, like a pattern on pattern approach, where it's, let's just say your lampshades are like a tiny kind of texture, like a little, almost like a zigzag. And then what's around it, maybe a solid, but also maybe like a stripe or some sort of other kind of bigger pattern of some sort. So it all kind of, again, all kind of plays with each other. It's just
Hmm.
fun. It's the fun of
What,
my job.
right now, looking in your living space, your home, you're in,
Yeah.
right around DC, right?
Yes.
At this moment,
Okay.
what would you do and what would you change?
In my home in DC.
Yeah. That might not be practical, but if you wanted to, and you would just say, if you could snap your finger,
Yeah.
I'm looking at that. I'm looking at that ceiling. I'm looking at that. What would it be?
Yeah. I would love to kind of do something what we're talking about a little bit, but do it with drapery, like do it with curtains and wallpaper. So in my bedroom, doing all of it wallpaper and then doing the fabric on either side of the windows in the same pattern. So again, what goes around comes around. This style was in I don't even know what era. Wasn't the 50s. I don't know. It was
Describe it again. I want to make sure I'm on your page.
Yeah, sure. So let's just say you have a floral wallpaper in your bedroom, and then the curtains, the things that are on your windows, have the exact same pattern. Like they're the exact same, pattern, only they're on fabric. So it all kind of just blends in with each other.
Why not? I mean that. I'm not just throwing that out there. I mean, why not?
Yeah. Yeah. And then the lampshades would have, there's a term called strié, which means just tiny little stripes that are kind of have some space between each other.
Oh, fair enough.
So almost like a strié stripe and a blue shade that would kind of match it all.
Isn't it funny that we're so fixated on making sure things match? And now for that person, you don't have to worry about it because it's the same. You don't have to worry about the match.
It's the same. It's the same. So yeah, because I think for me, I would love to be surrounded by this pattern that I love. And when I say pattern, I mean, again, it's not something super in your face. It is, easy to look at for a long period of time.
Sure.
I think there's some patterns where you feel like you're a little, you might be on something after you look at it for a long time. And these patterns that I'm imagining I'm more of a flower girl, so these would have some more flowers in them. So yeah, and I think for me, my favorite colors are some sort of combination of blue, purples, and little bits of pink and olive greens. So anything that's kind of a mix of all that, I'm game for. You know
what? What you're describing with the walls and the window treatment curtains, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's got to be the right pattern. That's what I'm getting. It's got to be the right pattern.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And if you're going to do it, again, this idea of commitment, right? You commit and you spend, invest in a room like that. Yeah, it absolutely has to be something that you love. And I say that too, because I actually have some pillow, Euroshams, what you have on your bedding, in a fabric that I have loved for over 8 years. And that's the one that I think about doing an entire room and curtains in, because I never get sick of it. I love it. I don't think I'll ever get tired of looking at it or being in it. It just will always make me happy.
Nice.
And yeah, I think there's a lot, I think people don't feel like they can say that always. I think sometimes people say, oh, I changed my mind, or I like too many different things. But there are, believe it or not, there are certain things that you get excited about. And even decades later, you still like it, even if it may not even be in anymore. It's still I still really like whatever that is.
And there's nothing wrong.
No,
that's whatever you're feeling. Wow.
And there's always a way to modernize it. So yeah.
Love your ideas. I feel I'm on the page. I'm looking for ceilings. Stay away. Don't let me in your home. I'm going to paint your ceiling.
That sounds great.
Riseinteriors.co is your website, and you can do things virtually as well. You can do consults and all of that.
That's right.
You are you're design freshness. That's what you are.
Oh, thank you, Steve.
All right. Thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her.
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge.
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend.
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.